I alone, water, swimming. 35 or 40 minutes. Swimming, only swimming.
It's June 14th, 2023, just after 2 a.m. A fishing trawler, estimated to be carrying 750 people, sinks in the deepest part of the Mediterranean, about 47 nautical miles south of Pylos, Greece.
Save me, wise, save me.
Inzamam is one of the 104 survivors of the Pylos shipwreck. When the boat capsizes, Inzamam falls into the pitch-black water. The shipwreck happens under the watch of Greek and European authorities who have been tracking the overcrowded, unseaworthy fishing trawler for hours. I'm Lydia Emmanouilidou, an investigative journalist, and this is Pylos, Υear On, an audio documentary produced by the nonprofit journalism organization iMEdD in collaboration with Solomon. Our award-winning investigation last summer uncovered previously unreported details about what happened during those final hours of the trawler and who was responsible for one of the deadliest shipwrecks in the Mediterranean. Solomon worked with the UK's Guardian newspaper, the German public broadcaster ARD, and the investigative nonprofit Forensis. We revealed that the actions and inactions of Greek and European authorities contributed to the tragedy and the deaths of hundreds of people. For that investigation, we interviewed nearly 24 survivors. We did digital reconstructions, reviewed sealed court documents, and spoke with Greek Coast Guard sources. We showed that Greece bungled what should have been an all-hands-on-deck rescue operation. The Greek Coast Guard and Frontex, which is the European Border and Coast Guard Agency, have faced scrutiny in the years since. But the responsibility was put on the shoulders of 9 survivors, 9 Egyptian survivors who, in the hours after being rescued, were arrested, accused of smuggling, and faced charges including causing the shipwreck. Our podcast, Pylos, Υear On, pulls back the curtain on the trial of the so-called Pylos 9, what's been widely described as a scapegoating effort, backed by questionable evidence. And we track the most important developments a year since one of the deadliest shipwrecks in the Mediterranean, and what's become of the survivors.
WhatsApp audio.
It's a few days after the shipwreck, and Inzamam, the survivor we just heard from, he was 21 at the time of the wreck. He calls us from the refugee camp where he and other survivors were taken to be processed. We're only using Inzamam's first name for security and privacy reasons. Same for other survivors.
I am good, my friend. How are you?
Inzamam spent several days in the hospital before he was brought to the Malakasa refugee camp. Inzamam says he lived thanks to God and because, growing up, he learned how to swim in the canals of his village in the Gujranwala district in Pakistan's northeast. The irrigation canals run between the rice fields where Inzamam's family made a living. He brings us into a 3-way video chat with a friend from his village who's hanging out by the same canals where Inzamam learned to swim growing up. Children take turns jumping in and out of the water. We ask Inzamam how he's doing in the camp.
Bad.
He says it's been difficult. He spends his days scrolling through TikTok and fielding calls from relatives to pass time, trying not to remember the shipwreck.
I remember, very sad, but I am today very happy. See the river, my friends.
Today, though, he's really happy to see the river and his friends, he says. Inzamam was one of about 350 Pakistanis aboard the fishing trawler and one of only 12 Pakistani survivors. There were also many Syrians and Egyptians on the trawler. According to Frontex's own calculations, approximately 750 people total were aboard. More than 600 are believed to have died. In the days after the shipwreck, Inzamam was showing us photos of victims that he knew personally.
I am so sad. This my friend, this my friend, this my friend. This friend all die. Very, very strong, very smart, very beautiful, my friend, all die.
How many
Very
friends?
15 friend, all
From Pakistan.
from Pakistan, Gujranwala, all die in the sea. Dawn.
The fishing trawler set sail from Libya on June 9th, aiming to reach Italy. It sailed aimlessly for at least 4 days in the central Mediterranean with a failing engine and without proper navigation. After 3 days, Inzamam says resources were running out.
Very, very difficult day in the sea. No eat, no food, no water.
On the morning of June 13th, the Greek authorities were notified of the trawler's location. Drone images captured by Frontex made clear just how overcrowded and unseaworthy the vessel was. Legal experts told us that under international law, Greece had an obligation to intervene. But Greece ignored several offers Frontex made to assist. It took the Greek Coast Guard nearly 10 hours to arrive at the scene of the trawler. Inzamam could hear the commotion when the Greek PPLS 920 vessel approached their boat, but he couldn't see what was happening because of where he was sitting and because it was dark. He says in the early hours of June 14th, after the engine had faltered, he felt the boat suddenly jolt forward like a rocket and then start rocking.
Ship here and there, here and there.
The ship rocked right, left, right, left.
Right, left.
When he was
Went
talking
right.
to us, he was gesturing with his hands how the boat was moving. Right, left, right, left. Other survivors told us they saw masked men from the PPLS 920 tie a rope to the migrant trawler. Then they say the Coast Guard vessel tried to tow the migrant trawler towards Italy, presumably so this would no longer be Greece's problem. Survivors told us there were 2 towing attempts, and that the second one caused the boat to tip and eventually sink. Inzamam fell in the water. He saw the Greek Coast Guard vessel had driven further away from their trawler, he says about a kilometer, and he started swimming towards it and yelling for help.
I swimming, 35 minutes swimming, go the Greek ship, big ship, I go swimming.
The Greek Coast Guard vessel didn't start a rescue operation until at least 30 minutes after the migrant boat was already underwater. Some of this information about the timing is in the Greek Coast Guard captain's logbook, which we obtained. Inzamam saw people drown all around him. One of his friends didn't know how to swim and just floated in the water for what felt like hours. Inzamam believes if the Greek authorities had deployed more quickly, hundreds of lives would have been saved. To this day, Inzamam is still trying to make sense of what happened on June 14th, 2023. As of early June 2024, a year after the shipwreck, Inzamam is still waiting for his asylum application, still living in Malakasa refugee camp with other Pakistani survivors. He's got a tax ID number now and can work. He took a job at a Coca-Cola plant a few train stops away from the camp, and then at an aluminum factory. He video chatted us from his work recently on his forklift, wearing a neon yellow worker's vest.
This is my machine.
Okay, you lift.
I start like this and start.
He's working 10 to 12-hour shifts, has to walk about an hour each way to get to work.
It is hard work. This is very hard and be careful, be careful.
But he's glad to have a job that keeps him out of the camp and earning money for his family back in Pakistan. This past year, he's been trying to learn Greek and improve his English.
My English good?
Your English is much better.
I try good English.
Yeah. I can understand the improvement. And Greek, too. Very good. Polikala.
Yeah. Polikala, olakala.
Very good. All good, he says. Inzamam has become a bit of a spokesperson for the shipwreck and the calls for justice since. He's regularly at demonstrations and community meetings speaking about what happened to him. When he's not at the camp or work, he often heads to downtown Athens. I meet him in Omonia Square, where he comes to see friends. He says he hopes to get his asylum papers soon so he can get a better job and can afford to move out of the camp.
I live there still, Malakasa, still. There, I live there 1 year, but this is no good. Only wait, only wait. We are worried.
He says he and other Pakistani guys waiting for decisions are really worried.
Give me justice, give me any legal paper. We leave Malakasa and come here, Athens, or go another village.
The people from Egypt and Pakistan are still in a limbo situation.
Eleni Spathana is a lawyer with Refugee Support Aegean, RSA, an NGO representing more than 30 survivors on their asylum claims. She says while some Syrian survivors have gotten asylum, the vast majority of Pakistani and Egyptian survivors are still waiting for decisions on their asylum claims.
The vast majority of them wait for their answer, which is quite problematic because these persons went through a traumatic experience.
And if they're sent back, they're at risk of being targeted by smuggling networks in their countries.
They cannot start their life, actually, in Greece.
Because they have no guarantees they'll get international protection. Spathana says what's most problematic is that at least 2 Egyptian survivors have had their claims outright denied. Egyptians do tend to have lower acceptance rates for asylum. The Greek Migration Ministry, which oversees the asylum procedure, did not reply to several interview requests. Rogayan is a 25-year-old survivor of the shipwreck. He's from Kobani, a Kurdish-majority city at Syria's northern border with Turkey. When we first met him at the Malakasa refugee camp in Greece in the days after the shipwreck, he was looking for his 18-year-old cousin who was on the boat with him. Rogayan eventually had to ID his cousin's remains before they were sent back to Syria for a proper burial. Like all Syrian survivors of the shipwreck, Rogayan has left Greece. Today, he's in Germany.
Nächster Halt, Bremen, Hauptbahnhof.
We meet him at the Bremen Central Station, a few train stops from the German refugee camp where he lives. We walk to a park where he comes almost daily to clear his head, says it's too loud at the refugee camp. Rogayan left Greece in September 2023 to apply for asylum in Germany. He's waiting for a decision. His brother and sister are here in Germany too.
It was like difficult for me in Greece. I want to leave Greece. It's like a black point in my memories now.
Rogayan puffs a vape, peach ice flavor, and cracks his knuckles. He's wearing a sweatshirt he was given in Greece after the shipwreck. He's visibly uncomfortable when he talks about Greece.
It's
like Greece for me. It's like I have like more bad memories in Greece. When I think about Greece, I remember the boat when we sank down. I remember also the people, the men with the masked men.
We ask him if he believes the Greek Coast Guard is responsible for what happened on June 14th, 2023.
It's for me, it's not if I believe or not. I saw that in my eyes, and I'm sure because I saw that in my eyes. It's not like asking about believing or it's I blame them or not. I saw them in my eyes, and I'm sure.
Rogayan and more than half of the Pylos survivors have lodged a criminal complaint against the Greek authorities over the shipwreck. At least 53 survivors allege the Greek authorities not only failed to take the necessary rescue measures after spotting the migrant trawler, but also attempted to tow it, leading it to capsize and sink. Family members of the victims also intend to file lawsuits for the wrongful loss of their loved ones. We repeatedly invited Greek and EU authorities to be interviewed for this podcast. Frontex declined an interview with its executive director, Hans Leutens, citing his busy schedule. At a press conference in March, Leutens responded to criticism the agency has faced over Pylos. He said search and rescue is not part of Frontex's mandate.
So we do not deploy primarily for search and not for rescue at all.
The Greek Coast Guard also declined our invite. A representative told us in a statement that the agency operates around the clock with, quote, absolute respect for individuals and their rights in accordance with international and EU law, end of quote. It declined to answer further questions, citing an ongoing judicial investigation and another ongoing probe by the Greek ombudsman. The Greek government also declined to make a representative available for an interview, citing scheduling conflicts because of the upcoming European Parliament elections. In an interview to the BBC in November, Greek Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis said the Pylos incident is being taken seriously and investigated.
But what I would like to point out is that our Coast Guard has saved tens of thousands of people at sea, and we should be grateful for the work they do. At the same time, I've been very open and forthcoming that we feel that we have a right to intercept boats at sea and at the same time encourage these boats to return to the coast from where they left.
Pylos wouldn't be the first instance of a deadly towing by the Greek Coast Guard. In 2014, the Coast Guard attempted to tow a migrant boat off the coast of Armakonisi, a Greek island. 11 people died. Greek courts cleared the Coast Guard of any wrongdoing. But then, the case escalated to the European Court of Human Rights, which passed a damning judgment against the Greek authorities in 2022, 8 years later. The European Court found the Greek Coast Guard had acted unlawfully in failing to protect the lives of the people at sea. Despite overwhelming evidence that it was actions and omissions of the Greek and European authorities that contributed to the shipwreck, 9 survivors were blamed, the so-called Pylos 9, all Egyptian survivors of the shipwreck. The oldest of the 9 was born in 1983, the youngest in 2003. They're arrested within 24 hours of the shipwreck. Their charges include forming a criminal organization, trafficking, and illegal entry. They're even charged with causing the wreck. A month after the sinking, in July 2023, one of our reporters speaks to one of the 9 in prison. Mohammed is 27 years old and had graduated law school in Egypt shortly before getting on the boat. He tells us he's innocent, not a smuggler, and that the smuggler he paid for the journey wasn't on the boat. Our colleague took this call from the beach. Calling times from prison were unpredictable, which is why you might hear some waves in the background. Mohammed also claimed that he and some of the other 9 were beaten by police during interrogations. About 70 kilometers from Cairo, in a small village, we meet the family of Ahmed, one of the Pylos 9. Ahmed is 32 years old. Before leaving Egypt, he was a construction worker, a day laborer. He's married with 3 kids, ages 14, 9, and 3. Our colleague Sameh Al-Aboudi goes to Ahmed's family home where 6 family members share a small space with 2 rooms, a small kitchen, and a toilet. From the beginning, this family, like other families of the 9, have claimed they're innocent of the charges Greece brought against them. Ahmed's wife Hoda says Ahmed wanted to go to Italy to support his family.
We had a child that died because we couldn't pay for its medical care. After that, Ahmed said, I have to travel to leave.
The child was born with a breathing problem. He needed to be put in an incubator, something that was only available at a private hospital, which the family could not afford. The boy died when he was about a month old. Ahmed's brother-in-law, Wael, says this turned the family upside down.
This was the turning point in Ahmed's life. His son is dying before his eyes, but he is unable to do anything due to poverty. This incident greatly affected his psychology, his mental health. His only thought was how to secure the future of his children. To prevent this tragedy from happening to him again, Ahmed decided to leave Egypt this way.
Ahmed's mother Sadeya says the family didn't have money for him to travel legally. His friends had heard about a way to do it illegally through Libya. So Ahmed left his village with his cousin and another friend. When he got to Libya, smugglers demanded money, 140,000 Egyptian liras, nearly 3,000 euros. Ahmed's wife sold off her wedding ring and his mother another piece of jewelry. They borrowed money from neighbors, which they say they still owe. Ahmed's mother says he was afraid of the smugglers and wanted to go back to Egypt.
But the smugglers told him, it's either your money or your death.
Ahmed's mother believes the whole point was to lure them to Libya and then force them to pay. Ahmed was in Libya for about 2 weeks. Before setting off on the boat, he sent his family a voice message saying, "Don't worry about us." While he was at sea, his family lost communication with him. Then Ahmed's mother saw news of the boat sinking on Facebook.
I screamed. I couldn't believe it. We searched online to find photos of those who survived and those who died. I found a video of my nephew Hussein saying, "Ahmed and I are alive, but our friend Abdullah drowned."
2 days later, photos of the 9 arrested started circulating. One shows a man in a police car after being arrested. He's covering his face with his hands. Ahmed's mother could tell it was her son just by his hands. Ahmed's mother says after he landed in jail, her health took a toll. She says she couldn't get out of bed for 4 months. For the duration of Ahmed's stay in prison, she wore only black, something done during periods of mourning. From prison, Ahmed would phone his family as often as he could through calling cards he got from his lawyers and from the Egyptian embassy. Ahmed's mother tells us her feelings during that period are hard to describe.
Every day that passed was a tragedy I can't describe.
She says she couldn't understand why her son was sitting in prison. In Egypt, he had never gotten in trouble, never even been to a police station. We also visited the family of Mohammed, the 27-year-old law school graduate. His mother, Gada, told us she was incredulous that survivors were being accused of crimes rather than receiving help.
Survivors should have been given psychological treatment, not charged with smuggling. Because of the people and the children who died in front of Muhammad's eyes in the sea. He used to say to me, "Mother, I need psychological treatment."
She says her son is not the one responsible for what happened on June 14th.
My son was a scapegoat.
Lawyers for the 9 also describe the men as scapegoats. A few days before the Pylos 9 trial on May 16th, their lawyers give a press conference in Athens. They take their seats facing a room packed with journalists, mostly from international media. Defense attorney Effie Ducey says the 9 were arrested and charged with insufficient evidence.
Εκφράζουμε μια έντονη δυσπιστία σε σχέση με το πώς αξιολογήθηκε.
We express a deep distrust towards the way that the evidence included in the case file was evaluated.
Lawyers say there are a myriad of issues and omissions in the indictment and case file against the 9, and issues with the preliminary proceedings. For one, they say the arrests were made within just 24 hours of the shipwreck, and they were based on the testimonies of only 9 other survivors. Remember, there were 104 survivors. Those testimonies were taken through interpreters who were not certified, lawyers say. Attorneys also point out that the investigation wrapped within just 3 months. Lawyers made requests for dozens of pieces of evidence they argue were needed to effectively investigate what really caused the sinking. They include the communications of the Greek Coast Guard on the night of the sinking, a request to examine all 104 survivors of the shipwreck, and a request to turn on and investigate the retrieved cell phones of survivors. Those were all denied. At the press conference, lawyer Dimitris Choulis says the arrests fit into a pattern of criminalization of asylum seekers.
Αυτή η 9 δεν είναι αυτή η 9. Είναι άλλοι 2.000 άνθρωποι που βρίσκονται στις φυλακές.
These 9 are not the only 9. There are 2,000 other people who are in prison through the exact same tactics. An arrest is made with no witnesses, no depositions, no videos, no evidence, nothing. And we throw these people in jail and forget about them.
Casting refugees as smugglers is common in Greece. It's a tactic that plays out in everything from the media to the courts. Even though it's well documented that smugglers don't go on these journeys, the trips are too dangerous. The smugglers could get caught, and they would also be taking up a lucrative spot on the boat. But controlling or driving a boat can mean facilitating unauthorized entry, a criminal offense. Today, about 2,000 people are detained in Greek prisons over smuggling. That's according to a 2023 study commissioned by the Greens EFA group of the European Parliament. According to the same study, they make up the second largest category of prisoners in Greek jails, and 9 out of 10 of them are third country nationals. Because the government can charge smugglers with up to 10 years per passenger, many of these people receive preposterously long sentences of several hundred years when found guilty. So it's the evening of May 20th, Monday, May 20th, and we're right in front of the Parliament building where a protest is about to take place ahead of tomorrow's trial. So activists and advocates here have organized a protest in support of the Pylos 9, who they claim are innocent and are being put on trial without adequate evidence. Survivors of the shipwreck and some family members hold a large banner with photos of some of the hundreds of Pakistani victims. Another banner reads, "Punish the murderers of Pylos." Tourists looking puzzled walk by. Across the street, in front of the parliament, a group of foreign visitors with cameras in hand observe the change of the guard. Inzamam, the Pakistani survivor in his early 20s, takes the mic at the demonstration. He's saying we were on a broken boat for 5 days, and it wasn't until the Greek Coast Guard showed up that we sank. A Greek passerby, an elderly man, he reads the signs and asks one of the protesters, "And who told these people to come here? Who sent them here?" implying it was their decision. The man says, "Instead of talking about our homeland, we're talking about them? Get out of here," he tells the protester. Recent polls indicate that many Greeks view migration as a threat to the country. Back in Egypt, Ahmed's family is nervously awaiting the trial. Ahmed's brother-in-law, Wael, has had his doubts about the outcome.
My feeling was that Ahmed might not be acquitted, because during this past year, I found out that the Greek government is tough on immigrants.
But he's held out hope. He organized with other families of the 9 accused, brought them together in a WhatsApp group, and gathered evidence to suggest they were not smugglers. We reviewed dozens of voice and text messages Ahmed's family members exchanged with 2 smugglers in Egypt and Libya, like this one. Family members communicate with a smuggler in Libya to arrange payment for Ahmed and his companions. We also reviewed messages and photos that place Ahmed in a room in Libya where migrants stayed in precarious conditions for weeks before being put on the boat. We also visited and spoke to the family of Mohammed, the 27-year-old law school graduate we contacted in prison. Records his family shared with us show communications with the smuggler and payments the family made to the smuggler. It is almost 5 a.m. and we're about to board the bus to Kalamata for the trial. In the early hours of Tuesday, May 21st, my colleague Stavros Malichoudis and I meet in downtown Athens to board a bus organized by activists. They bring a megaphone and picket signs to protest outside of the courthouse. We're expecting several shipwreck survivors to come along to testify in the trial. Other journalists are coming on the bus too. A little after 5 a.m., we're on our way. One of the organizers gets on the bus mic. He says other activists from Kalamata will be waiting there when we arrive. Those on board seem simultaneously drained and restless. The survivors we're expecting to come testify never show up. It's possible they got spooked. Some might not want to go to Kalamata, where they were detained right after the shipwreck. Javed Aslam is the president of the Pakistani community of Greece, a community group.
We are going to the Kalamata court to be present because of the 600 people who died. We want justice for every family, for every father, mother, for their children. That is why we are here, and we will continue to stand by the people until we have justice.
In the seat next to Aslam sits Hassan Ali. His little brother, an 18-year-old named Fahad Ali, was on the boat, but he hasn't been heard from since the shipwreck. Hassan says his parents constantly ask him, "Where's your little brother?" They're holding out hope he's still alive because his remains have not been recovered, like most of the people presumed dead. Hassan says he's convinced his brother is down in the sea, dead, even if his parents think he's alive. Kalamata is about 3 hours, 250 kilometers south of Athens. By the time we arrive at the courthouse, several groups of protesters have gathered outside, and there have already been clashes with police. We hear that at least one protester has been brought to the hospital. Inside the court, the trial has been delayed because there's no translator. A little after 9 o'clock, the 9 defendants are called in, and a 3-judge panel takes the bench alongside a prosecutor. A row of court officers stand in front of the spectator area, the gallery. The courtroom is packed, standing room only. The presiding judge orders everyone standing to leave. We and other journalists sit on the ground. Greek and international media are here, including the BBC, France Libération, Le Monde, AFP, and others. Among those in the gallery are relatives of the 9 standing trial and survivors of the shipwreck, representatives from the Egyptian embassy, and supporters. Families of the 9 back in Egypt and elsewhere are getting the play-by-play through family that's here. Inside the courtroom, things are chaotic. One of the defense attorneys bemoans the disorganization at such a high-profile trial. Key witnesses are missing. A defense lawyer says survivors who were supposed to testify were never even properly summoned. During this proceeding, defense lawyers take an approach that's divided the team in the weeks leading up to the trial. They argue that the Greek court has no jurisdiction over this case because the incident took place in international waters, even though it was within the Greek search and rescue zone. This has been divisive because some lawyers want to present all the evidence they've spent months collecting, evidence they say points to the culpability of the Greek authorities and the innocence of the 9. But they go ahead with the argument. Lawyers present relevant documents from 4 similar decisions where Greek courts found that Greece does not have the jurisdiction to try crimes committed by foreigners in international waters. They argue the jurisdiction question supersedes other issues with the trial, including what lawyers see as glaring omissions in the case against the 9 and issues with the preliminary proceedings. Defense lawyer Dimitris Houlis makes this argument. He says the 9 accused never passed through Greece, nor was there any chance they would pass through the country, nor did they ever intend to pass through the country. The tragic shipwreck brought them to the country, acts of the Coast Guard brought them to the country, and they could not do anything about it, and therefore the court has no jurisdiction to try them. Several people will testify on the ship's trajectory and whether it entered Greek territory, but the first witness is the key one. The prosecutor calls up Miltos Zouridakis, the captain of the PPLS 920 vessel, the Coast Guard ship that was on scene. It's a surprise that he's here, wasn't expected to be. Just a few months before the shipwreck, this captain had been awarded for, quote, his valuable contribution to the protection of maritime borders and human life at sea. Now he's standing in front of the court, testifying for one of the deadliest shipwrecks in the Mediterranean. He looks nervous, fidgety every time a journalist approaches him, his face squirming when the shipwreck and the 600 lives lost is brought up in the courtroom. He speaks low at first, then the judge asks him to speak up so that the audience can hear. As he testifies, the chants from protesters outside get louder. The captain testifies that based on his knowledge, the fishing trawler embarked from Libya, destined for Italy. He says there's no doubt that the incident, the sinking, happened in international waters. Then the 9 are called up, one by one, to take the stand. Mohammed, the law school graduate, is first. He's asked about the ship's starting point, Libya. Its destination, Italy. Ahmed, sixth in line, says the same. So do all the others. All 9 men claim they're innocent of the charges brought against them. The judge and prosecutor take recess to consider the evidence. Defense attorneys roam the halls of the courthouse nervously. Outside, protests continue. At cafes in the area, even the yayas, the grandmothers, are whispering about the trial. When court is called back into session, the 3 judges approve the prosecutor's recommendation, which means the case is dismissed and the 9 are acquitted, innocent. The court has deemed itself incompetent to try this case over lack of jurisdiction. The gallery breaks out in applause. People start to cry. Some of the 9 come towards the back to greet and hug family members who are there or on video. One even takes a photo with a court officer on duty. Lawyer Hulis tells me in the hall later that this is a much better result than anticipated.
The result was amazing, even better than we expected. And now we are going to the next step to find out why this happened and how many people are dead in the Aegean and stop doing this, because it's from our actions as a country and as EU.
He says he expects the 9 to be processed and released from prison within a day or so. I overhear people in the halls of the courthouse angry with the decision. They say the 9 are guilty and should have been found so. One woman sarcastically yells out, "Sure, they're innocent." Outside, lawyers are greeted with applause. Back in Egypt, families were celebrating too. Here's how Ahmed's mother described the moment she found out about her son's acquittal.
I ran out into the street with my hair out, without my headscarf, shouting, "My son is acquitted, my son is innocent." Then I took off my black clothes and treated the neighbors in our village to juice and rice pudding I made.
After the trial, the defense team in Greece also goes out to celebrate the outcome. They see this as a major victory, but also a politically convenient one for the Greek state. Lawyer Effidusi questions why the jurisdictional objection wasn't accepted a year ago. She says maintaining the charges fabricated a sense of guilt of bloodthirsty traffickers.
Αυτό κατά τη γνώμη μου συνέβη ακριβώς για να χρησιμοποιηθεί αυτή η κατασκευασμένη ενοχή και αυτή η εικόνα.
This, in my opinion, happened precisely so that this fabricated guilt and image could be used to cover up the responsibility of the Greek Coast Guard.
She says this decision, although legally sound, is also the most politically convenient outcome for the Greek judicial system because it avoids exposing the Greek Coast Guard in a hearing process.
Γι' αυτό επιμένω ότι αυτή η απόφαση, αν και είναι σωστή,
That is why I insist that this decision, although legally sound, benefits the interests of the Greek state. Because this way, what exactly happened and why a legal process wasn't followed was not exposed in a public process to thousands of journalists and dozens of observers.
Again, we asked the Greek Coast Guard and a Greek government spokesperson to come on our podcast to answer these claims, but they declined to do it by our deadline. A week after the trial, 4 of the 9 are released. The rest are still being held, despite attempts by lawyers to get them out. On the last day of May 2024, they meet at a community space in downtown Athens. The 4 reunite with other survivors of the shipwreck and embrace. It's the first time they're seeing each other since June 2023. The guys released talk with their lawyers, thank them for all their work. Ahmed, the father of 3, is here.
We didn't know our fate, if we're going to come out or not, but we had faith on God.
He's wearing a button-down shirt and a fresh pair of sneakers. He and his cousin Hussam both look lighter, more relaxed. It's a hot day, and Ahmed jokes with an interpreter about how the beach is not an option for him. He's too traumatized to go swimming.
Yeah, because I was telling them he will go to the beach to swim, and Ahmed said, no, I have trauma with...
Ahmed says until recently, until he was released a few days ago, he felt like a body without a soul. But that's changing now. He's staying with his cousin Hussam in Athens. He tells us he's waiting for the other 5 to be released from jail to celebrate with them. He says his plan, for now at least, is to stay in Greece. Some activists who are here give speeches, so does one of the 4 guys released. Then lawyer Effie Ducey makes an impassioned statement. She says people are asking her if she's happy with the outcome of the trial of the Pylos 9.
Δεν είναι απλό. Εμένα όταν με ρώτησαν αν χάρηκα, είπα ότι χάρηκα μια στιγμή.
She says, I was happy for only one moment, and I haven't been happy since. Because, she says, the 9 are only partially vindicated. They've only gotten partial justice. Same for their families. She lists off family members in Egypt who, she says, were deprived of their loved ones for 11 months.
11 μήνες, παραμένει αδικαίωτη η Χαγιάμ, ο κύριος Σαντέλ, η κυρία Σαντία, η Χόντα, η Μαλάκ, ο Μοχάμετ, ο Αντέλ.
Ducey says true justice will be served when the true perpetrators are held responsible, when the Greek Coast Guard is held accountable.
Η δικαίωσή τους θα έρθει όταν θα καταδικαστεί το λιμενικό.
Lawyers hope to see that happening through the criminal complaint the 53 survivors brought against the Greek authorities. They're discussing whether some of the Pylos 9 might want to join in on that lawsuit. But it's not clear if and when that will go to court, or what evidence will be considered. Lawyers and advocates are in this for the long haul. They say they'll keep fighting on behalf of the 9 and on behalf of the hundreds presumed dead at the bottom of the sea. Pylos, A Year On is an audio documentary by the nonprofit journalism organization iMEdD in collaboration with Solomon. Our reporting team includes me, Lydia Emmanouilidou, Sameh El Aboudi, Corina Petridi, Stavro Malichoudi, and Iliana Papangeli. Uzair Ahmed was our engineer and composed original music for this podcast. Ludek Stevanoha helped with research and public access to documents requests. Illustrations by Galatia Iatraki. Executive producer for iMEdD was Panagiotis Menegos, iMEdD Podcast's content and production manager. Special thanks to our photographer in Egypt, Ibrahim Abdelmonam, and to Omnia TV for a press conference recording used in this podcast. For more audio content by iMEdD, you can go to podcast.imedd.org.